Hello everybody, welcome back to Geeks and Barbells. So this is the first video I'm going to be doing in the Healthy Circle series. And I have been mainly focusing on more geeky stuff. And I mean, let's face it, health, fitness, nutrition, it's pretty much geeky also, the way people get into it these days. And the topic I am going to be focusing on today is most definitely geeky in nature, in the sense because I think one of the biggest problems we all face in, we'll say, the health sphere, in my experience after over a decade now of just reading, researching, listening to tons of stuff, going through my own health issues, is that for many people, and I don't mean this in any bad way, but most people have no idea what they're talking about. And when you're talking about especially nutrition, people get very, very religious in nature. They get very moralizing. They read an article somewhere online or hear someone say something or read a news piece, and all of a sudden they just take it as fact and then start regurgitating it to other people with no actual basis in reality. They don't go research on their own. They don't look at studies. They don't look at the studies actually being cited in an article. And so you end up with a whole bunch of people who have views on the topic of health, on nutrition, and they don't actually understand anything. They don't understand the biology of a point. And that's why we end up, and why we ended up for so many years, where before we demonize fat, then now fat's okay, and then we demonize carbs, and carbs okay, and now we're demonizing protein and meat, and we keep going through these cycles, and people just don't get honest about the fact that almost all the science we have on nutrition is in its infancy. There are higher quality studies that have been done, what's called an RCT, or random controlled clinical trial. There's other styles of studies that are at least a little bit more legitimate, but overall 90% of the studies that we have out there are what's called observational, or they're basically epidemiological. So what that means is we're asking people to answer questionnaires about how they've lived their life over the last couple of years, over a couple of months. And most people are not capable, and this is not in any way a bad thing, it's not their fault. Everyone's like this. We cannot remember how we ate a year ago, or 6 months ago, or even a month ago. Most people cannot even remember what they ate over a week ago. They have general ideas, but they make mistakes. And even subconsciously, many people lie because we have an idea. Every person has an idea of what's healthy and what's unhealthy. And just like children, we don't like to be honest about the fact that when we're doing naughty things. Someone eats a whole bunch of cake or ice cream or junk food, and they're having hamburgers and this and that. Whatever your mentality of what is bad and what is good, many people will lie, or they deliberately forget. Sorry, not deliberately, but they unconsciously forget what they've been doing. And so we have many, many, many of these studies that are done that are just not truthful, and so not even valid. On top of that, many epidemiological studies, they are not properly looked at, in the sense that they don't deal with confounding factors. So someone says, oh, meat is going to cause this, okay? And then they don't take into account the fact that someone was also you had higher rates of smokers, or they were also doing many other unhealthy things in their life, and there was no way to remove those variables from the equation. And many times when studies do remove those variables from the equation, it is still not shown properly. So I'm just going to make this up, but for example, you have two different groups of people who are eating two different ways, and they say, well, we'll take vegans and meat eaters. They'll say the vegans had a 20% lower risk of cancer in this. But then when you actually look at the data, that 20% is actually not 20%. What it actually is this. Again, I'm making this up, but it's, for example, the vegans had a 2% chance of getting colon cancer, and the meat eaters had a 3% chance, which for almost everybody in the world, 1% increase. So like, who cares about 1%? But when you're looking at it from a mathematical perspective, like that 1% difference between the two groups, they can jigger it and then say, oh, it's 20% increase in colon cancers for people who eat meat. Which is, then you're like, oh my God, 20%, it's pretty big. Okay? But it's not that, it's 1%. It's just the way they jigger the numbers. Because obviously, let's face it, as I said earlier, there's a huge kind of religious component to how people are when they're talking about these things. There's a lot of moralizing, there's a lot of agendas, there's companies and corporations that get involved, there's big money, and then there's a lot of people who have become so moralizing about their food that they're willing to bullshit just to get people to stop doing things. Now, this is not an argument against how people want to eat. I'm not even going to talk about specific lifestyles or eating habits or whatever. You eat however you want to eat. I frankly don't care in this moment. What I care about is how people are reading science. And this is what people need to understand. First of all, as I said before, most nutrition science is in its infancy. And so you can't even trust most of it. And it's not because scientists are trying to be bad or anything. It's just because humans are complicated. There's big differences even between individuals. There's some general similarities between all of us, but the way I was raised, my environment, my parents' environment, my gut bacterial environment, the lifestyle I live, everything, my background, my genetics, my ethnicity, all these things play into how I'm going to interact with the food that I'm eating. And so the difference between me and my sister is big. It can be very large, and that's not even counting like actual allergies, intolerances, genetic polymorphism. So when people have just mutated genes within their body that makes them not like metabolize a nutrient well or make a hormone properly, and then you get even more problems that people can have. And so we are complex beings. And so to say that there's one way to eat based off of one study that someone did is ridiculous. Okay? Most of the studies that come out in the news, in journals, and all this stuff are what we call, like I said, epidemiological studies. These things can give you like a correlation. It's like an idea. It can give you an idea, like we see these things, let's go explore it. And unfortunately for most nutrition science, whatever it's about, they find these correlations, and then when they do more strict studies, it disappears. They cannot actually find these causes in the same way that they seem to be sort of there. And that makes sense because when you look at how each individual is and how we eat, and how also our lifestyle, how we train, how we sleep, all these things affect our body and how we interact with food also. So there's no way to take a person, even when they do really phenomenally controlled studies, which are called randomly controlled clinical trials, and they take people and they separate them out into proper groups and they control every single aspect that they can, those people are still only representing a small, tiny subset of humans in a very controlled environment that has no real basis in reality and how we all live our lives normally. So again, you can have so many problems. So when you are just looking at studies or journals or articles online and stuff like that, take it with a grain of salt. Read as much as you can. Read up on some videos and books and stuff on how to actually look at statistics, so you don't get bullshitted by these fucking journalists who are just trying to get views and clicks on their shit, because that's a lot of what it is. 40% increase on this actually only ends up being like a 2% increase. It's just because they jiggered with the numbers, they put 40%, and of course that draws so many more people because we get freaked out. Oh my god, 40%? If I eat broccoli, I'm gonna die. And it's bullshit. It's mostly bullshit. And so don't let yourself get freaked out by the media, because that's what a lot of it is. A lot of this is just bullshit media. It's probably like 80% of the crap on nutrition out there is just media trying to get views, and people the more freaked out they get about something, the more views something gets, the more reads. And the other 20% is mainly people who have an agenda. They have an agenda and they want you to eat the way they are eating because it makes them feel good. I mean, even the most innocent people who are not like trying to like get you to eat it, they become so passionate about their view because it worked so well for them that they don't care about anything else. I was sick, I was like this, I started eating like this, I feel great, therefore everybody should be eating like this, and anyone who disagrees with me is wrong because look at me. You know, they get very, very passionate. And, you know, I understand where they're coming from, but don't let yourself get caught up in other people's stuff, okay? Be open, be honest, understand that everybody's different and you are different. You are unique, and what even works for you now might not work for you in 5 years. You might have to change. You always have to understand that as your lifestyle and your life changes and your gut bacteria changes and all these things change as you shift and grow, you're not going to eat the same as you did 20 years ago as you do now. When I'm 60, I'm definitely not going to be eating the same as I eat now. My lifestyle is going to be completely different. My body's going to have changed. Things are going to have slowed down. Other things will be maybe more efficient. Others won't be efficient. I'm going to have to change things as I go along. And if I get stuck into one view of how to eat, that's how you end up with people who get really, really sick. And usually people who lock themselves into one way of eating and get very moralizing about it end up 15, 20 years down the line getting sick as fuck because they're deficient in so many nutrients, and they just kept ignoring. They ignore symptoms, or they double down. They double down and get even more and more strict. So don't let yourself get caught into this. Don't let yourself get caught up with the media's bullcrap. Do not go on Instagram, okay, and look at memes and photos to get your health advice. It is not the right place. If you're going to do that, make sure that you vouch and veto the person that you're following like crazy. Look up all their information. Check out other positions which go against it. Look at actual studies, random control trials. Look around the world. If this person is saying you should only eat like this to be healthy, but yet there's like 12 countries that are well known for eating like completely differently and they're very healthy, well then there's obviously some other aspects to the story that this person doesn't want to acknowledge, and they have an agenda. Okay? There are cultures out in the world that eat high carb and they're really healthy. There are cultures out in the world who eat pretty much only fat and they're really healthy. There's other cultures that eat high protein and they're really healthy, and everywhere in between. And that just goes to show you that ethnicity, your background, your environment, how you grow up, the kind of quality of food that you're eating, all these things matter, and everybody is different. So you need to find what works for you, okay? Will I say that there's some stuff that's just inherently is just not good for you? I think so. Maybe I'll talk about that in another video, but don't let yourself get bullshitted by the internet, because a lot of this, let's face it, it's just the internet, and it's people trying to make money and they're trying to fuck you over. Okay? They just want you to get views. Don't read an article and then start regurgitating it as though it's fact. Not if you haven't done your own research. Just don't do that. You are making yourself get trapped into a hole that you will never be able to dig yourself out of if you start going down that path. Okay? And you'll probably make yourself unhealthy. So just remember, you are a unique person. Find what works for you. If you're not sure if you're like tricking yourself, then do tons of research. Go get blood tests, get your gut checked. Be honest with yourself, but don't get bullshit. All right? Hopefully you will stay healthy throughout this whole entire period of COVID. The most important thing is that you do the best you can to take care of yourself. And a lot of that is the basics. You know, get outside, get some fresh air, get some sunlight, walk a lot, do some movement, do a little bit of training, eat well, don't eat a bunch of junk, and sleep really well. You know, do that stuff and most people will be pretty damn good. And if you want to get that extra like 20-30% of feeling amazing, then you got to start being really careful. But ignore the shit on the internet, except for this video.